It happened during her wedding toast. My sister held the mic with the same smile she's always used on me, the one that looks sweet to everyone else, but slices like glass if you've known her long enough. She raised her champagne flute and said, "To every guest who's built something meaningful in their lives and didn't just hide behind blogs and hobbies." People laughed. Even the ones who didn't know who she meant, they laughed because it sounded clever. And because in that moment, I was invisible again. But then, from across the room, her groom stood up, not with anger, not loudly. He walked over, took the mic from her hand, and with the calmest voice I've ever heard, he said, "You don't mock the woman who taught me what resilience really looks like. You celebrate her." The room froze. Chairs stopped shifting. Glasses hovered mid-air. And for the first time in my life, someone had silenced my sister without raising their voice. I hadn't planned to go to the wedding. Not after everything. Not after the childhood where I was the blurry one in every photo. Not after being the invisible guest at every celebration, including my own graduation. I wore that green dress anyway, the one I was never allowed to wear as a kid because it's your sister's colour, and I brought something else with me, tucked deep inside my purse, a letter I wrote years ago, one I never had the courage to send. I wasn't sure if I'd give it to her that night, but I knew this much. This time, I wouldn't leave the room feeling small. Not again. The first time I remember feeling small wasn't because someone yelled at me. It was quieter than that. It was a spring Sunday, and I was 6 twirling in the hallway mirror in a green chiffon dress I had secretly taken from my sister's closet. I thought it made me look like a forest fairy, like something beautiful. I heard footsteps behind me. It was her. She didn't scream. She didn't hit. She just looked me up and down and said, "Wow, you really wish you were me, huh?" Then she took the dress back, slowly, as if removing something I had no right to touch. And that was that. My mum found me later sitting on the porch in my pyjamas. I still remember her tone gentle but dismissive. "Sweetheart, that dress isn't made for you. It drowns you." She meant it kindly. She always meant it kindly. But after that, I stopped trying on her clothes, stopped standing in mirrors, stopped twirling. At school, I was the quiet one. I read books during recess. I clipped poems from the backs of cereal boxes. I told people I wanted to be a writer, and at every family gathering, my sister would laugh loud enough for everyone to hear. "Don't ask her to play charades. She only talks to books." Everyone would chuckle, even Grandma. There was no single blow, just small, daily lessons that taught me where I stood. That green dress became a symbol of who I wasn't allowed to be. And she became the measuring stick for everything I wasn't. Sometimes I wonder if I'd fought back even once, would things have been different? But the truth is, when someone convinces you you're forgettable, you start making yourself easy to forget. High school brought space, but not relief. She was captain of the cheer team. I ran the literary magazine in a back room with flickering fluorescent lights and a leaky ceiling. She dated quarterbacks. I wrote poems I never let anyone read. But it wasn't the differences that hurt. It was the way she used them. Like little needles wrapped in silk. At Dad's 50th birthday, I gave him a framed short story I'd written just for him. It was about a quiet father who saved his daughter from a thunderstorm. My sister smiled and said, "That's cute. I got him golf clubs. You know, something he'll actually use." Everyone laughed. Even Dad smiled politely, then turned to open her gift. Those weren't accidents. They were patterns, like the time she volunteered me to babysit her friend's toddler, then posted pictures online of the spa day she finally earned. Because my little sister's so selfless. She never asked me. She just assumed I'd say yes. And I did, every time. The worst part, she knew how to hurt me without ever raising her voice, without breaking a rule, without leaving proof. She would just take up all the space in a room and leave none for me. Sometimes I think our mum saw it. The way I flinched when my sister joked at my expense, the way I got quieter after each family dinner. But she never said anything. She'd just smile and say, "That's how sisters are. One talks, the other listens." And I started believing that maybe that's all I was good for, to listen, to fill chairs, to make space. By the time I turned 21, I stopped going home for holidays. I said I was busy, sick, working, but the truth was simpler. I was tired of being the punchline in rooms full of people who claimed to love me. The last time I tried, really tried, was the night of her college graduation party. She had just landed a job at some big-name PR firm, and the whole family was gathered. Streamers, champagne, even a cake shaped like a briefcase. I brought a gift, a custom journal with her initials embossed in gold. Inside I wrote, "To new beginnings," and stories only you can write. I thought it was thoughtful, personal, meaningful. She opened it, glanced at the cover, and said, "Or, you still doing that Etsy stuff?" Then she turned to her friends and added, "My sister lives on vibes and vintage fonts." They all laughed. And my mum? She leaned in and whispered, "She didn't mean it that way. Don't be sensitive." But I wasn't being sensitive. I was being erased. Right there, in a room full of relatives, I disappeared all over again. So I smiled, I hugged her, and I left before dessert. I walked 5 blocks in heels I hated, past windows glowing with other people's families, families that probably fought, but maybe didn't humiliate each other for fun. That night, I deleted the family group chat, not in anger, just in quiet resignation. No final texts, no dramatic posts, just silence. The kind that grows roots. Over the next few months, I skipped Thanksgiving. Then Christmas. No one asked why, no one called, not even Mum. And honestly, it hurt less than I expected. I moved to a new apartment, started freelancing for local businesses, opened a blog. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. And for the first time in years, I wasn't bracing for the next joke, the next jab, the next moment of being laughed at for simply existing differently. I didn't leave to make a point. I left because I'd finally realised some spaces are not built for you to grow, only to shrink. The first month was hard, not because I missed them, but because I didn't know who I was without their version of me. I'd spent so long being the background, the quiet one, the convenient listener. Now, there was only silence, and me. I started small. One Sunday, I walked to the corner coffee shop and asked the manager if he needed help with his website. He laughed, then shrugged and said, "Sure, but I can't pay much." I didn't care. I redesigned his homepage in 3 nights. He gave me free coffee for a month and told 2 of his friends. That's how it began. One small job led to another, a florist, a second-hand bookstore, an old woman who wanted to sell her handmade quilts online but didn't know how to use PayPal. Every week, I built something new. Not just websites, but confidence, voice, a place to stand. I worked from my couch, in pyjamas, with cereal at midnight and playlists from 2006. It wasn't glamorous. No one clapped. No one posted photos of me crushing it. But it felt like breathing after years of holding it in. Sometimes I'd get tired. Doubt would creep in like fog. Who was I kidding? I wasn't my sister. I didn't network. I didn't pitch myself. But then I'd look at the thank you note from the florist who cried when her site went live, or the handwritten card from the bookstore owner who said my blog brought him 5 new customers. And I'd remind myself, quiet success is still success. One day, while folding laundry, I found that old green dress stuffed in the back of a moving box I never unpacked. It looked smaller now, not physically, but symbolically. I hung it on the back of my closet door, not to wear, but to remind myself I never needed to fit into her life to build my own. It started with a message on a random Tuesday. Someone named Rachel from a local entrepreneur network had seen the bakery website I designed and wanted to feature me in their monthly newsletter. Just a short blurb, she said, a spotlight on women quietly building things. I almost said no. It felt unreal, undeserved, but I said yes. And 2 weeks later, there I was. A headshot taken on my phone. Next to a quote I barely remembered writing, "You don't need a loud voice to create loud impact." The response was small, but it meant everything. 2 emails from strangers asking if I could help with their shops. One woman sent a DM just to say, "Reading about you made me feel seen. I'm a quiet builder too." It wasn't fame. It wasn't viral. But for the first time, I wasn't invisible. I was seen. In my own way, on my own terms. I remember calling Mom that night. I told her about the article, about how people were starting to notice my work. She said, "Oh wow, that's lovely. Your sister just got promoted too, did you hear?" And just like that, the air thinned again. But this time, I didn't let it sink me. I smiled, congratulated my sister out loud, and quietly muted the call before the list of her new clients began. Then I opened my laptop and finished a pitch deck for a local artist collective. 3 days later, I got my first paid contract, enough to cover rent, groceries, and maybe a new pair of boots. I bought the boots. Black suede. Not practical, but strong. I wore them to my next client meeting, hands trembling, heart loud in my chest. The client looked at my mock-ups and said, "You've really got an eye for making things feel real." I said, "Thank you." But inside, I whispered, because I know what it feels like to be erased. By the end of that month, I had 5 steady clients, a tiny home office with a second-hand chair and a whiteboard with a handwritten quote that read, "You're not behind, you're just building roots." And for the first time in my life, I believed it. Somewhere along the way, I stopped flinching when I heard her name, not out of spite, but because I no longer felt less. It didn't happen overnight. There was no grand epiphany, no viral moment, just little shifts, like the time I walked into a room full of strangers at a women's business meetup and didn't apologise for being nervous. I just introduced myself. I'm Ava. I build brand identities for small businesses, mostly people who've been ignored by the big guys. And someone nodded and said, "We need more people like you." It was a strange feeling, to be wanted, not tolerated, to be heard, not translated. My identity stopped revolving around what I wasn't, not the sister who isn't pretty enough, not the daughter who talks too quiet, not the one who never speaks up. I became the one who helps others speak, the one who builds things that feel like home, the one who shows up fully. There were still echoes, of course. I'd scroll through social media and see her champagne brunches, her perfectly lit selfies, the best boss ever captions. And for a second, I'd wonder, was I still behind? But then I'd look around, at the cosy little studio I built from scratch, the client thank you notes on my wall, the email from a teenage girl in Ohio who wrote, "Your blog gave me the courage to apply for art school." And I'd remember, this version of me, she's not behind, she's free. One night, I took the green dress from my closet door and packed it away. Not because I hated it, but because I no longer needed the reminder of who I used to be. I had new symbols now, a leather-bound sketchbook, a chipped coffee mug that read, "Keep creating," and the boots, always the boots. That quiet girl who once walked out of her sister's graduation. She was still here, But now, she walks taller, not louder, just steadier. It arrived on a Thursday, a thick cream envelope slipped under my apartment door. No return address, just my name handwritten in my sister's distinct cursive. Not a text, not an email, a letter. Already, I knew. It meant something bigger. I opened it slowly. Inside, a glossy invitation, decorated with pale gold foil and a floral border I recognized instantly. Her wedding colours. The words felt surreal. You are warmly invited to celebrate the marriage of Claire Thompson and Ethan Miles. Saturday, June 12th, Whispering Pines Estate. Warmly invited, the last time we spoke. She called my blog Your Little Therapy Journal, and now she wanted me at the most photographed day of her life. I sat on the couch, invitation still open in my hands, as my coffee went cold beside me. It wasn't just the invite, it was the handwriting, that looped A she always wrote when she wanted something, the careful way she signed her name, like branding a product. I hadn't seen her in 3 years. Not since I walked out of that graduation party, not since the muting, the quiet exodus, the green dress in the box. And yet, there it was, my name, in gold, a request to return. I called my mum. She answered on the second ring. Hi, sweetie. I was just about to call you. Did you get Claire's invitation? Her tone was bright, hopeful. Like this moment might fix everything. I asked, did she actually want me there? Or just didn't want questions about why I wasn't? Silence. Then, it's her big day. Maybe this is her way of reaching out, starting over. Starting over. Funny how the people who hurt you always want to start over on their timeline. But I didn't say that. I just said I'd think about it. Then hung up. Then stared at the invitation, like it might whisper an answer if I waited long enough. That night, I stood in front of the mirror and tried on the black silk jumpsuit I'd bought months ago for a networking event I never attended. It fit like it was made for a different version of me, but something about the way I stood in it, spine straight, chin up, made me wonder, if I went, would I be walking back into her world, or stepping into mine? I didn't RSVP right away. I left the invitation on my fridge, held up by a chipped magnet from a trip I never took. Every morning, I'd see it. The gold letters glinting beside my grocery list, and every night, I'd find a new reason not to go. What if it's a setup? What if she wants an audience to mock me again? What if nothing's changed? But deeper than all that was something worse. What if she's different now, and I'm the one who hasn't forgiven? I journaled about it for days, not performatively, just raw, scribbled thoughts like, does healing mean going back? Am I scared of her, or of being invisible again? Would showing up mean I've grown, or that I've given in? Then came the dream. I was standing at the back of a wedding tent, everyone in white and laughter and wine. She walked by me in her gown, gorgeous, glowing, and I called her name. She looked straight at me and didn't recognize me. I woke up with my heart pounding and my hands clenched, not because she ignored me, but because in the dream, I didn't even feel surprised. That morning, I made tea and sat in my favourite corner chair, the one with the view of the elm tree and city skyline. I took out a pen, opened the RSVP card, and just stared at the tiny boxes. Yes, no. I thought of my younger self, the girl in the green dress, waiting to be acknowledged, the teen who got told to lighten up, the woman who walked out quietly so no one would have to feel uncomfortable. But I wasn't her anymore. I'd built something strong, quiet, real, and maybe, just maybe, this wedding wasn't about her. Maybe it was a chance to stand where I used to shrink. I ticked the box. Yes, And under dietary restrictions, I wrote allergic to fake smiles, then scratched it out, smiled and wrote none. I didn't plan to make a statement, not at first. I wasn't going to walk in dripping confidence or vengeance. This wasn't a movie. It was just a wedding. A few hours, some vows, some champagne, and a chance to not flinch anymore. Still, I needed to feel like myself. So I started with the boots, the same black suede ones I bought after my first real paycheck. They were worn now, creased at the ankle, but they still made me feel steady. Then I found the dress. It wasn't flashy, not emerald or silk, just a soft, midnight blue wrap dress that hugged without squeezing, flowed without begging. When I tried it on, I stood straighter. Not because it transformed me, but because it didn't try to. Hair, simple, pulled back with one silver pin, the kind my grandmother used to wear before she started gifting them all to Claire. Makeup, clean, a little rose on the lips, a bit of shimmer on the cheek. No drama, just presence. But more than how I looked, I rehearsed how I'd feel. What if she rolled her eyes? What if someone joked, "Didn't expect to see you here"? What if I heard laughter the moment I passed? So I wrote responses in my journal, not to memorize, but to remind myself I had options. Smile and say nothing. Tilt head. Say, wow. Walk away. Laugh first. Don't perform. And then I wrote one last note to myself. You don't owe them power just because they used to have it. The day before the wedding, I laid out everything on the bed, the dress, the boots, a delicate chain necklace with a tiny book charm, a gift from my first client, a hand-penned RSVP card, folded once and tucked in a thank you envelope, and beside all that, a sealed letter to myself. It just said, you get to leave whenever you want. I wasn't going to reclaim anything, I wasn't going to prove anything, I was going because I could. The estate was exactly as I imagined. Stone pillars, strings of lights woven through willow trees, a white canopy stretched like a silk parachute over the lawn. Everything shimmered, even the air smelled expensive. Jasmine, candle wax, and something citrus. I stepped out of the car first. He followed. Ryan? Not a date, not a boyfriend, just someone who showed up when I needed calm more than romance. He'd been the first intern I mentored, now a design lead at his own studio. He called me boss, even when we weren't at work, especially when I doubted myself. You good? He asked. Straightening his tie in the car's side mirror, I nodded. I brought boots, a backup speech, and exactly 0 expectations. He smiled. Perfect. Let's go make an entrance. We walked slowly toward the garden path, each step softened by the gravel, each breath collected between nervous laughter. People turned. Not many, but enough. You could always feel the shift when someone unexpected arrives. I felt the old reflex rising, the need to shrink, to explain. But then I looked down. The boots, worn, grounded, still carrying me. We reached the welcome arch. A woman in burgundy with a clipboard blinked at me, then smiled with the same vague politeness you use when you're not sure someone's supposed to be here. Name, please. I answered gently, Ava Thomas, and this is Ryan. Her eyes flicked to the list. Oh yes, right this way. Inside, the world bloomed. Gold-rimmed champagne flutes, rows of ivory chairs, a quartet playing a soft rendition of Can't Help Falling in Love. Everything curated, everything designed to impress, and yet I didn't feel swallowed. We found our seats near the back. Ryan leaned in. Want me to be your buffer today? I smiled. No buffer needed. Just be yourself. Copy that, boss. I glanced at the head table. Empty for now, but I could see the name cards. Claire, Ethan, Mom. Mine wasn't there, and that was okay. I wasn't here to belong. I was here because I'd stopped asking for permission to show up. The ceremony began under a canopy of pale pink roses. Claire walked in to a cello version of 1,000 Years, her dress sleek, satin, no veil, a modern bride. She looked beautiful, no denying that. She passed our row, her eyes slid over the crowd like scanning a landscape. She saw me, paused, just a flicker, then kept walking like she'd seen a chair out of place. The vows were short, sweet, custom-written. People laughed in all the right places, cried at the rehearsed ones. I didn't clap, not because I was bitter, I just forgot. At the reception, it got harder. People moved in circles, old friends, family, conversations formed, sealed, shifted again. I stood near the mimosa bar, pretending to debate between peach or mango. I wasn't thirsty. Ryan returned from the buffet with 2 mini quiches. "No one knows what to say to you," he said quietly. "So they say nothing." I nodded. That's their tradition. Silence is how they save face. My aunt walked by. She did that thing older women do, a double take, a forced smile, a hug that landed on one arm. "Ava! Oh my! It's been ages." Then, "How's your little blog?" I smiled. "It won Best Long Form at the Indie Digital Awards last year." She blinked. "Well, isn't that lovely?" Then turned to greet someone else. At our table, a cousin whispered something to her friend. They both glanced my way, then looked away too fast. Ryan caught it. "Want me to spill something on them?" I almost laughed. "No need, just sit with me." Claire never came by. Not once. She did the rounds. Toasts, table photos, but never ours. Her new husband did, though. Ethan, calm, kind eyes, soft smile, confident, but not loud. "Hey, Ava, right? Claire's told me about you." I smiled carefully. "Hopefully, not everything." He chuckled. "No, just the good parts." And somehow, I believed him. Still, as the lights dimmed and the music rose, I felt it creeping in. That old ache of being present, but edited out. Dinner had just started. Everyone at our table had been served except me. A waiter rushed over, apologetic, murmuring something about a mix-up in dietary notes. I waved it off. "It's fine. Happens." But still, a small part of me wasn't surprised. Claire stood to give her speech. She tapped her champagne flute, and the tent quieted. She was radiant, words polished, timing perfect. She thanked her parents, her bridesmaids, her new in-laws, and then, with a crooked smile, and to my sister Ava, "Thanks for finally showing up to something." Laughter. Not cruel, just enough. A ripple. I didn't move, didn't flinch, just placed my napkin on my lap like it was part of the toast. Ryan tensed beside me, but I shook my head gently. Not now. The music resumed, forks clinked, the moment passed, or tried to. Later, I stepped outside. The garden path was quieter now. A few smokers, a kid chasing fireflies. I stood near the fountain, hands clasped, letting the silence cool my nerves. That's when he came. Ethan, her groom. Not dramatic, not searching, just walking. Alone. He paused beside me. Didn't speak at first, just looked at the water. Then, she shouldn't have said that. I said nothing. He exhaled. "She jokes like that when she's nervous, when she feels seen." Another pause. "But I saw you, Ava, long before tonight." I turned to him, and he met my gaze, not with pity, but clarity. Then the sentence that cracked it. "You walked in like someone who wasn't waiting for anyone's approval. That's rare in this family." He didn't linger. Didn't say sorry for her, didn't offer platitudes, just nodded once, and walked back inside. But it stayed with me long after the music faded. That one sentence. Not loud. Not performative. just true. It didn't erase what Claire said, didn't heal anything, but it reminded me, sometimes it's not the one who cuts you who matters most. It's the one who sees you bleeding and doesn't look away. The night kept going. Dancing, toasts, group photos in front of fairy lights. But something in me had already clicked closed, not snapped, not broken, just sealed. I stayed long enough to hear the DJ call for the father-daughter dance, long enough to see Claire twirl, laughing into our dad's shoulder, while Mum wiped a tear like it was the final scene of a movie she already knew by heart. No one noticed when I stepped back from the crowd. No one stopped me when I picked up my shawl and quietly gathered my things. Ryan walked me to the valet. He didn't ask why. Didn't try to convince me to stay, just looked at me, softly, like I was finally a whole sentence instead of an unfinished one. "Want company?" "Not this time," I said. He nodded, no offence taken. "Proud of you, boss." It wasn't sarcastic, wasn't sweet, just true. As I waited for the car, I glanced back one last time. The tent glowed from inside like a paper lantern. Laughter spilled out. So did a faint echo of Claire's voice, telling a story to someone who probably didn't care about the ending. I thought I'd feel hollow or vindicated or something big, but I didn't. I felt clean, like stepping out of a room that had too little air and too much perfume. The valet handed me the keys. I slid into the driver's seat, turned on the engine, and didn't even check the rearview mirror. No dramatic exit, no burning rubber, just a woman in a soft blue dress, headed home with both hands on the wheel. I didn't say goodbye, because they never said welcome back. The drive home was quiet. No music, just the sound of tyres on familiar roads. Streetlights blinked past like slow, rhythmic punctuation. Halfway home, I passed the diner, the same one we used to go to after piano recitals, back when I was 10. Back when Claire and I still wore matching coats, hers pink, mine blue. Mum said we looked like pastel crayons. One night, after a school award ceremony, they took us there to celebrate. Claire had won most likely to lead. I had won best effort. She held her certificate up like a trophy. I folded mine in half, tucked it under the napkin. I remember Mum saying, "Claire's always been a natural." Then she looked at me, smiled gently, and Ava's a hard worker. "You always try your best, sweetie." At 10, I didn't understand the difference, but I felt it. I asked for the cherry pie. Claire ordered chocolate lava cake. When the waitress came back, she accidentally gave me the wrong one. I didn't say anything. I just pushed the cake toward Claire and quietly ate what I was given. That moment came back to me now, clearer than it should have. Not because it hurt, but because it used to. And tonight, it didn't. Tonight, I hadn't taken what was handed. I had walked away, on my terms, full, not folded. I pulled over, just for a moment. The diner was still open, same flickering neon sign. I almost went in, almost ordered the cherry pie. But I didn't need to, because for the first time, that little girl didn't feel invisible. She'd grown into someone who didn't beg for slices of love from people who only served crumbs. And that was enough. When I got home, the house was quiet. I slipped off my shoes, hung the shawl on its hook, and turned on the hallway light. Just enough to see, but not enough to feel watched. My daughter was asleep, curled up like a comma in her bed, one hand holding a plush dinosaur we'd picked together at the Science Museum. Peaceful, unbothered, untouched by all of it. I stood in the doorway for a while. Not long, just long enough to promise myself she'll never feel like the background in her own story. Then I walked into my room, opened the closet, reached for the small grey box, tucked behind an old suitcase, the box I'd carried from apartment to apartment for over a decade, the one I never opened until now. Inside, a folded letter still sealed, my handwriting on the front. Claire. The things I never said. Written 5 years ago, right after Mum's 60th, right after she gave Claire the heirloom locket and told me, "You'll get something meaningful too someday." She never explained what that meant. She never did. The letter wasn't angry. Not then. Not now. It was sad and tired. I thought I'd cry reading it, but I didn't. Because the woman who wrote it, she wasn't me anymore. She wanted closure. I'd already chosen peace. I placed the letter back in the box, but this time I added something else. The gold hair clip Claire gave me on my 13th birthday. The one I wore once, then hid because she laughed and said it looked too grown up for you. I smiled, not bitterly, just knowingly, then closed the lid. I didn't burn the letter, didn't shred the clip. I just stored them, not to forget, but to release. Because symbols don't lose their power when we bury them. They lose it when we decide they don't define us anymore. It was the mirror. That's what did it. A week later, I was cleaning out the guest room closet to make space for some shelves. That's when I found it again. The old standing mirror from my parents' house. The one I used to twirl in when I was 6. The one where I first heard, "You really wish you were me, huh?" I sat down on the floor, right there in the dust and cardboard, and stared at it. The frame was chipped, one corner bent slightly inward, but the glass still clear. I pulled it up against the wall, angled it toward the window where the afternoon light hit just right. Then I stood in front of it. No dress, no twirling, just me. Hair unbrushed, sweater too big, tired eyes, no makeup. I looked at myself for a long time, not to judge, not to compare, just to see. And slowly, a thought surfaced, gentle, but strong. I don't wish I were her. Not anymore. I said it out loud, once, then again, as if to tell that younger version of me who still whispered from time to time, I don't wish I were her. The mirror didn't reply, didn't argue, just reflected me, whole. And for the first time in years, I saw someone I didn't want to fix, or shrink, or hide. I saw Ava, not the sister, not the disappointment, not the background character in someone else's spotlight, just Ava, still standing, still soft, still enough. And I smiled, not big, not performative, just honest. 3 days later, Claire texted me, just one line. "Saw your name on Ryan's post. You looked happy." No apology, no explanation, just a sentence dangling in space, like a balloon she released, but wasn't sure she wanted back. I stared at it for a long time, not because I didn't know what to say, but because I wasn't sure if I needed to say anything at all. I clicked her profile out of instinct. The first photo that popped up was from the wedding. Claire, Ethan, Mum, all smiling, all unaware that I had left halfway through the night. And suddenly, it hit me. How much time I'd spent waiting for them to notice, to reach out, to say, "You mattered too." But now, I didn't need it, because the silence after I left wasn't empty anymore. It was full of everything I'd found outside of them. Love that didn't come with conditions, peace that wasn't borrowed, joy that wasn't measured against someone else's applause. I didn't reply to the message, not out of anger, but because I had nothing left that needed defending. Instead, I opened the box again, the one from before, took out the folded letter, and for the first time, I ripped it, not violently, not dramatically, just intentionally. One slow tear, then another, until all that remained were pieces too small to be reassembled. Forgiveness didn't come in a conversation. It came in the decision to stop writing chapters in someone else's story, and that was enough. It was months later, Spring had just crept in. My daughter and I were at the park. She was climbing the ropes, laughing, shoes kicked off in the grass. I sat on the bench with a coffee in hand and sunlight in my lap. That's when I saw her, across the walking trail, half hidden behind a blooming tree. Claire, she wasn't walking, she wasn't calling out, just standing, alone. Her hair was pulled back loosely, a jacket half zipped. No makeup, no crowd, just her. For a second, our eyes met. Not long, not intense, just enough. She looked down first, then back up, not with defiance, not with guilt, but with something else. Recognition, maybe even regret. Or maybe I imagined it. I didn't wave, I didn't move, just looked at her the way I once looked into that mirror, steady, still. She turned away, walked back toward the street, and I let her go without carrying any piece of her with me. Later that night, I did one last thing. I printed a photo, one I'd taken the night I got home from the wedding. It wasn't posed, wasn't filtered. Just me in the kitchen, holding my daughter, both of us in pyjamas, cake crumbs still on her cheeks. I wrote one word on the back, enough. Then I slipped it into the old grey box and closed the lid for the last time, not because I needed to remember, but because someday, if my daughter ever asks, "Mum, were you ever invisible?" I can say, "Once." But only until I decided not to be. And that was the end of that story. Some stories don't end with applause. They end with a breath, a quiet nod, a closed door that no longer echoes. I used to think closure meant confrontation, that if I didn't get the last word, I'd never feel whole. But now, I know better. Some people never apologise, some wounds never get named, and some rooms you walk out of before the music even ends. But that's okay, because healing isn't loud, it's not a scene. It's a choice you make quietly, repeatedly, until it becomes your baseline. And sometimes it's as simple as this: a box, a photo, a word on the back that no one else needs to read. Enough. Not bitter, not final, just true. If you've ever sat at a table and felt like a guest in your own family, if you've ever been handed crumbs while someone else got the cake, if you've ever wondered why love seemed to skip your name, then maybe you'll understand this. Forgiveness isn't for them, it's for your own peace. And when that moment comes, when they look for your reaction and realise you've gone quiet, that silence, that is your power. So let me ask you, have you ever chosen silence, not out of fear, but out of strength? And when you did they notice? Or did they just feel your absence like a mirror they weren't ready to face?